Ladies and gentlemen, you are in the lab with Hoopsology. I am Matt Thomas, joined by my best friend and co-host, Justin Goodrum. Justin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
Doing good. Can't believe that we are less than 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. Doesn't
Right.
feel like it. Kind of surreal. Uh, really happy with how the season has kind of rolled out so far in the NBA. We've got a lot to discuss today. Before we get into it, just a reminder, you can always get in touch with us, hoopsologypod@gmail.com, if you want to send any email topics or feedback. Um, and you can also get in touch with us anywhere we're on social media. We've had a lot of growth on YouTube lately, really appreciative for that. So be sure to check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, see the backlog of content there. A lot of great evergreen interviews and a lot more coming your way. Some that, hey, we just recorded today and are looking forward to launching. So bear all that in mind. With that being said, I want to open with a little bit of Bulls talk, Justin, and we won't go too dark with it, hopefully, because I want to keep your spirits up. But let's start with a really positive note. I think if I told you DeMar DeRozan is going to have the pass of the year potentially, you'd tell me I'm crazy. Break down this play for us. Tell me,
Yeah.
are you as stoked as I am on this play?
No, it was incredible. Kind of got lost because they lost a game. It was pretty not that too competitive, but incredible pass for sure. Kind of like a 360 pass. It's incredible athleticism by DeMar DeRozan. Yeah, I I would have lost that bet completely. But go check it out on any social media platform. It probably has like millions and millions of hits. So that'll be up there as one of the top plays of the season for sure. So
Yeah, somewhat Jokic-esque with
yeah.
eyes in the back of the head, finding
Oh yeah.
his teammate on the baseline from driving and causing the misdirection, driving to the lane as though he were going to lay it up. So
Mhm.
really cool to see. Also, reports coming out from Shams Charania that the Bulls may be doing a fire sale this season. As Justin said in our preseason predictions, it's kind of time to blow it up. Justin's ready to go. What would you like to see them do? Do you think all pieces need to go, or are you just looking to be like OKC East, get picks? What are you looking for?
I think as we've seen through the league recently, I think it's best to get picks. Now, the bummer is that the Bulls will suck. They'll be, we're talking Detroit territory. But if there's a battle plan in place, you can see the dividends there. I mean, look at something like Golden State, look like Oklahoma City. I mean, it goes on and on in terms of building with young talent. And I just think with Chicago, I mean, this was just doomed for failure. Getting, I would say, I this might be controversial to say, but mediocre all stars. I
Hmm.
mean, guys that have great talent, but you can tell these put them together, they're not going to win any kind of a title. Now, on different teams with higher echelon superstars, I think it might be different. I think it might be good for Zach Levine to go to a team where there is a player that is at a higher stature, but currently constructed, especially with Lonzo Ball, his career being, strictly in doubt. I just think it's best just to get rid of everybody. Zach Levine was on a trading block just in terms of the Twitter sphere. I think it's confirmed that his agent's open towards a trade as well as Chicago. I've heard Alex Caruso being mentioned, in trades as well. So I think it's best to blow up this team and move on and just get picks. So
I would co-sign that, and I certainly hope you guys find talent like the Rockets. So far, we'll talk about them in a little bit, but so
yeah,
far
no, sure.
the talent down the road is
Another good
starting to pay
example.
off.
Yeah, you're right.
So I do wish you that same success. I want to see the Bulls good again, for you, if nothing else, but also for that iconic brand in the NBA. It's been
Yeah,
kind of like almost like the Jordan curse
yeah.
since then. But um, I certainly am pushing. I was talking about this on X earlier today. I want Alex Caruso in a Rockets jersey. He'd be a fantastic piece for that team that is very defensive minded. So
Yeah, he's great.
that's what I'm hoping for, and I'm willing to give you some draft picks for that.
We need them,
See what
so we'll see
happens.
what happens. Yeah.
Um, so moving right along, again, like I said, an eventful week in the NBA since we last spoke. There have been some plays. We'll talk about some team trends in a bit, but I want to start with kind of some standout moments. The Timberwolves were playing the Golden State Warriors, and Anthony Edwards, incredible athlete. If you watch basketball, you know this. If you've seen a few minutes of Timberwolves basketball, you know this. But he flies in the air as though it's an NBA Jam level dunk. I mean, probably dunk of the year so far. Didn't look real, like looked like a modified video with how high above the rim he got. And, he decided to celebrate this by flexing. I don't know what words are said or if he just like grunted or screamed or something, but he gets hit with a tech right away. And the week before, another example for you, Justin, Giannis gets ejected, goes in the lane, like fast break, big, powerful dunk. I believe the Bucks were playing the Pistons. And Giannis earns his second technical, again, flexing after a massive dunk. Why are we putting the brakes on emotion in games? I mean, just, I don't know. Floor is open to you. What do you make of this? What's going on here?
Paranoia of physicality escalating. And I think that it's gone overboard. Now, no disrespect to my mom. I mean, it's funny. We're kind of talking about this because it's long story short. When I was younger, my mom was not into sports, and now she is. So it's just hilarious how I move out and all of a sudden she's a huge sports fan. But my dad and my mom were having a conversation of basically, if anything like unsportsmanlike, unnice would happen, she's like, why would they do that? And no disrespect to my mom, it's like she hasn't played sports and she hasn't played basketball. And I think sports taunting and just not only intimidation but emotion is part of the game. And I think if you haven't played, you don't understand that too much. So I think, especially within basketball, just like trash talk, intimidation is part of it. I mean, if you hear any players from Kevin Garnett to Kenyon Martin to Steven Jackson, Charles Barkley, Shaq, I mean, the list goes on and on, of intimidation, just emotion of the game. And so I'm with you, man. I think it's ridiculous. I think that it's gone overboard. And honestly, I think it might hurt I don't know if it's going to result in anything monetarily or views going down dramatically, but I think it does hurt the fan experience.
Oh, yeah.
If you're watching, look at if it's the NBA finals, right? And let's just say it's Giannis and Golden State. That's hypothetical. And Giannis just dunks it, with like 5 seconds left. I mean, if that ref's calling a technical, I mean, oh my God, can you imagine? Just for a taunting? I mean, if it's a big dunk, if it's like 1 point lead and he hits a dunk to take the lead and you're to call a tech. I mean, just the amount of hate that would come down. So I think it's overboard. I do think and I don't know, people may disagree with this. When it gets physical, so pushing, shoving, I think warning both teams is correct. I think TECHS is correct when you are getting physical. So you're laying a hands on somebody, where you're pushing, throwing a punch, that is fine. But honestly, cussing, I'm cool with it. I mean, I would say, I don't know, anything like super duper vulgar might be, I guess, over the line. But, I think flexing, it's ridiculous to call it tech. And I think that's a dangerous territory to go down for the game.
Here's the thing, too. I mean, if you have like eye contact, there are some signs that could clearly be like more direct taunting. And flexing for dudes, that's a pretty normal way
It
to
is.
celebrate something going right.
Yeah.
I mean, if I nail a project at work, I might I might flex the biceps real quick, and I'm not trying to put anyone down or anything like that. So the idea of these techs for flexing after you dunk it, I mean, do we want to get where we draw that logic out and say like, hey, And shout out to Tom Habistro. I saw him tweet this exact thing, but it's correct. If you draw the logic out on this, I mean, should we ban dunking? I don't think
It's
so.
true.
Nobody
True.
would say that. Even the NBA front office would not say that. The other
Yeah.
thing that comes to mind, Justin, as you were making those points, which I agree with, we've seen more egregious things in recent memory. I mean, as short ago as recent memory as last season, guys doing this too short taunt. They score a basket, and then I can't really demo it that well, but they put their
Oh
arm
yeah.
down and
Yeah.
say, you're too short, basically like you can't guard me. I personally, I mean, unless you are really staying in that player's area, getting in his face, like trying to start physicality, like you mentioned, I'm not a fan of either of those being called. And the flexing on the dunks feels even more egregious, though, because especially if you're the home team and this has happened, the crowd has just erupted. You've gotten this momentum, and now you're stopping the game. You're taking the air out of the room. And over something that I think 99% of the time is not going to cause physicality. And yes, it can escalate. We've all seen that happen before. But I think honestly, with how the league is right now, I think we're past the point. You have to keep fans safe. We've talked about it on the show, but I don't think we're in a place where like an Auburn Hills incident would happen, things like that. I mean, that's going to take um, something very, very much so an outlier from what we have seen in recent years.
Yeah. No, completely agree. I think this is a huge overreaction. Hopefully, this is corrected because my concern is that this escalates into the playoffs. And that's where we have a real problem. I mean, regular season, whatever, no one's going to remember. But if this is in a playoff situation where it's close, it could affect the outcome. And now, we have betting too. So let's not forget that. I mean, people are already huge conspiracy theorists. I mean, if you're going to call a tech on a taunting penalty, on a taunting call in a key playoff game, I mean, who knows how much ramifications it's going to have in terms of just betting and all that. So it's a slippery slope for sure.
Yeah. And another kind of interesting play happened that I want to get into for someone whose career, sadly will be partly defined by injuries. I think when we look back, excellent player, Chris Paul, you know, often by media called the point god, one of the guys with the best career assist to turnover ratios, which is why he coined that nickname, or earned it rather. Um, he was falling after a loose ball. Happened to see Mike Conley next to him in the lane. This was, I believe, that same game, the Warriors versus the T-Wolves. And he took the opportunity, saw Mike Conley next to him, and you can watch the video highlight. It would be difficult to convince me that it's not intentional, that he falls in towards Mike Conley. Thank goodness, nobody hurt. We don't want to see that. We get enough injuries as it is. Mike Conley's fine, but Mike Conley's had an injury history too, and wouldn't be shocking, if he's blindsided in this situation. Wouldn't be shocking if that could potentially cause injury. What were your thoughts on this play? And I think so. I'll lead real quick with this. I mean, I think if Mike Conley is hurt, we're having much bigger conversations about it. And I think there's no question there's suspension happening. But if the intention looks pretty clear, which the video evidence is there, why not a suspension anyway, even if not as harsh?
Yeah, I think honestly, Matt, we might disagree here. Um, Now, I think you have to factor in his past track record too. So this is not a guy who is like a saint on the basketball court. There's been
True.
other incidents as well, so we have to factor that in. But looking at this as a independent observer, I mean, he's going for the ball right now. I'm seeing it in slow motion. So it looks like, you see Cat and somebody else gets tangled up. You see Mike Conley and Chris Paul go for the ball. He's going for it. And so I'm stopping in slow motion now. So he's bracing himself on the floor here. And I'm wondering if he's trying to protect himself to have possession of the ball so Mike Conley doesn't. So he's kind of cradling it like this
Mm,
so Mike Conley can't get to it.
mm.
And the way it happens is that Chris Paul falls directly on Mike Conley. Now you can argue that like he goes right into his leg. I think that is where the iffy part goes. Is we're going right towards his
The
leg, right?
iffy thing to me is the change of natural
Yeah,
direction.
sure,
As soon as he makes contact with the floor, he
sure.
kinda shifts into
He
Mike
does.
Conley. So if he's going in a straight line, that's not where his path trajectory would take him.
Sure. Is he shifting that trajectory to have full possession of the ball, or is he going fully into trying to hurt Mike Conley? I think
That's a fair question, and I
just
don't
in
think we can ascribe intent just by watching a highlight, of course. I mean, we obviously aren't in Chris Paul's head to know that.
so looking at it, I mean, again, it's hard to fathom him not seeing Mike Conley. You could clearly see he looks at him before diving on the floor. Um, I would say, just looking at it as an independent observer, that he's more just trying to keep possession of the ball, but it does look bad. It looks bad. There's no doubt. I'm not going to sit here and just say he had, pure intentions, and it's just a fluke he ran into him. It does look bad. I don't think it warrants a suspension to me. Um, I don't see anything overly egregious about this. I mean, guys dive for the ball. I think there has to be a lot more evidence to warrant any kind of a punishment to take further action against Chris Paul, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
I'm
fair.
pretty hard on players in terms of cheap shots, but I
No,
just
you
don't
are,
feel it's in that category for me, anyways.
or
But
not quite
I'm,
enough to get
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah, I don't. I
Yeah,
might
and
be in a
I
minority.
for the record too, I usually, am pretty light-handed on suspensions in a lot of cases too. I think, what I would hope at bare minimum, and probably this has happened since the Timberwolves have, made a stink about it, is warnings behind the scene,
Sure,
probably from the league office to Chris
probably.
Paul,
Yeah.
is kind of what I suspect has happened here. But it's interesting, and yeah, we're kind of mixed on this. Um, you guys let us know in the comments, fair or foul,
Yeah, let us
suspension
know.
worthy, not suspension worthy. Help kind of settle the debate for us. And by the way, I'm not saying, like a 10-game suspension or something. At most, I would say like a 1-game suspension, just kind of slap on the wrist with how it looked from watching that highlight. But you guys let us know your thoughts. Now, want to look at, we have some teams have played just about 10 games, and especially by the end of the night when our games happen this evening, there will be teams that have completed their first 10 games, about an eighth of the season. Certainly, the season's not over for anyone. It does feel kind of like some irreparable damage has happened to a few teams that are out there. One that I want to mention, and Justin, I don't want to be too gloaty on our podcast or anything like this, but just do want to remind the listeners that we did pick the Clippers as the 10 seed.
Yeah, we did.
And man, they are 11th in the West right now. They're 0-4 in the James Harden era. How are you feeling about this Clippers team? I mean, do you think certainly they have to have more time to gel? I think you and I would both agree on that. We haven't seen the full product yet, but what are your initial thoughts? Are you starting to get worried?
Oh yeah, there's cause for concern, and I think Stephen A. Smith's very controversial, but I agree with him on this point. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, isn't he the star of this team? Isn't he the two-time Finals MVP? I mean, isn't
100%.
he the leader? I mean, ultimately,
The only one
now,
with success on this team.
yeah, that was the whole point of getting him from Toronto. So where is he? Why is he? Where's his culpability here? I mean, I understand with James Harden that there is blame to go, but I mean, he just got there. He's trying to work his way into this offense. I I mean, what about the rest of the guys on this team? So yeah, there's a point for concern. And to me, in terms of talent, yeah, I mean, this is way worse. This is I would say, way worse situation than the Chicago Bulls. I mean, trying to put, like you're saying, man, you're short. Trying to put all these stars together and just expecting it to be successful is not going to cut it. I mean, look at the teams that have won the NBA title. I mean, most recently. I mean, these are not super teams. There is continuity that needs to happen very clearly. And
They're real
so,
teams.
yeah, real
They're
teams,
not super
exactly.
teams, they're real
Yeah,
teams.
real
Yeah.
teams built on chemistry and built through the draft, and not just, hey, we're gonna put a collection of superstars and let's see what happens. So yeah, this is a huge cause for concern. And at this point, it's just like, what do you say? I don't. Good news that it's at the beginning of the season. There's so many games. Again, you have like, I don't know what the Clippers in season tournament record is, but if they can somehow, I guess, turn it around in that fashion, there you still have Christmas, after the in season tournament to Christmas Day to MLK Day. There's still some benchmarks where you can put some runs together to salvage what happened at the beginning of the season. So it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
completely over. But I would say there's a huge point of concern. And yeah, I think this would be damaging to a lot of the players on this team's legacies for sure. I think it's time to press the panic button. That's for sure. Yeah.
Here's the thing. When we saw that Brooklyn, super team
Yeah.
kind of form and fizzle out, it felt like there was a point where the expectation or the hope is, oh, we're gonna be successful if we can just have two of these three guys out on the court. When it was Kyrie, KD, and Harden. If we can just get 2 out of 3 of these guys on the court any given night, we've got a good chance to win. With the Clippers right now, to me, it feels like if we can just get 3 out of these 4 guys on the court any
Yeah.
given night, we're going to have a good chance to win. Well, we've had all 4 of them on the court. We've seen, yes, they need to get used to each other, but I think we're both low confidence in James Harden's track record, as we've talked about on the show. And we're low confidence also in getting 3 out of those 4 guys on the court, especially through the course of a long slog of a season that we know about and into the postseason where everyone needs to be dialed in. And it just seems to me like, as mean as it sounds to say, this may be a team of has-beens together.
Yeah.
I've used this reference in the past, but the Clippers may be this year's version of the cinematic masterpiece Wild Hogs, where you have all these old actors together in this movie. And I love this analogy. I'll always try to bring it back when I can. But this is the NBA's Wild Hogs, the movie, at this point. I don't know that Kawhi is going to take it up to the next level. He's looked good at times. I don't know that Paul George is. He would be the main hope as kind of one of the younger ones of the bunch here. And then Harden, he fizzled out in the playoffs last year. He had moments where he looked brilliant, but can he do it consecutively for a long time now? I don't know. Doesn't seem like the track record is there.
Well, don't forget, we have a buddy who was in that movie. So
That's right. That's right. I have to give it a shout out whenever I can.
Right.
All right. Well, I think most people are in agreement about the Clippers and kind of the disarray there. I do wonder, this team also has a high chance of imploding, I think, and tempers really flaring in the locker room. This losing streak isn't helping with that. If they get on another big time losing streak, right now, this is a pretty minor losing streak. They can pivot and come back from it. But things, another streak, longer in length, could be kind of the match that lights the powder keg, so to speak. I want to move to the other team in Los Angeles, kind of another narrative that was floating around this week. Austin Reeves has moved to the bench, and this generated this narrative that the Lakers need to make some trades again and acquire a third star. Do the Lakers need a third star, Justin?
I think they do, just based on Anthony Davis's injury reputation. I mean, he can't be trusted in these games. I mean, it's just fairly clear. I mean, when Anthony Davis is playing consistently, they're one of the best teams in the NBA. When he's not, they're whatever. They're pretty forgettable. So I think so. I don't know. I mean, they made moves last year during the trade deadline. I don't know what they can offer this year to really make it happen. So, especially in kind of a quick fashion. So I have no
They're
idea.
kind of strapped in. I mean, unless they
Yeah,
trade like D'Lo, it seems like his contract was written to be
yeah,
a potential trade deadline asset. I wonder if the noise is going to start again, if LeBron's going to drum something up about bringing
yeah,
Kyrie in. But I don't think the Lakers need a third star. I think, as you mentioned, I think they need that health from Anthony Davis. They need the guy who is supposed to take the reins to take the reins. But
hmm
we'll see if that happens. We
yeah,
know that hasn't happened over the past couple years. So um, we'll keep an eye out there. Want to mention, on a more positive note, as we enter towards the end of the show here, there are a lot of teams that are unlike maybe the Lakers, but certainly the Clippers. They're actually exceeding our expectations. One that you and I did not see coming, at least this early, is the Dallas Mavericks,
yeah,
sitting in the Western Conference with an 8-2 record. And I think the biggest change that I did not expect by a Luka Doncic led team, from what I heard, they are fifth in pace in the NBA, which we generally think of Luka, or at least the narrative has been he's the next version of James Harden, like just kind of he's a black hole for the ball. It's going to stop with him. He's going to go to the end of the shot clock. Well, not the case in Dallas this year. They're able to move around a little bit faster. Grant Williams has been a great addition so far. He's shooting lights out from downtown. That may not continue in the same fashion, but I guess I'll just ask you at this point, I mean, do you think the Mavericks are legit? However you want to define that. It doesn't necessarily have to be title contender, but are the Mavs legit?
I think it's too early to tell. I know it's kind of a corny
No, that's
response.
fair. We're 10
Uh,
games in for them. They're 8-2.
And it's not sold this base, and the Porzingis thing makes me nervous. Now, granted, he's a different position, but look at Kyrie. I mean, he has not been known as the most phenomenal teammate. So I just
Oh, I
think,
see. The chemistry with Porzingis,
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah,
Gotcha.
the chemistry with just him and Luca, and now we haven't heard anything with Kyrie and Luca. Who knows? They could be a great duo, and they could be the best of friends. Who knows? But right now, and based on last year, I think it's just too early of a sample size. I think I'll be more sold on them again when we are near MLK, and if they're at the top of the Western Conference. And I think that'll be a good indication of the Mavericks to see if they're for real or not. Because let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on Luca. I mean, a lot of people say he could be the face of this league, and you know, you only going to run out so many excuses if the roster's not built around you. So I think with him, and I think we'll get to maybe later with the Timberwolves. I think they're in a similar path, just in terms of Luca and Anthony Edwards, in terms of like, okay, when are you going to actually become take your team to that next level? So it's too early to tell now, but I think there's potential there for sure.
That's fair. My concern with Dallas is I'm still not sure if this is just teams not used to the scouting report in this faster pace. And I
Sure.
still have question marks about their rebounding and their legitimacy there, which I think would certainly be an Achilles heel in more intense postseason play. So I think it's fair to reserve judgment on that, but I'm excited for them that they're off to a good start. Last year, I believe you had picked Luca as your NBA MVP preseason pick. It may be that we see some noise for that this year, but I'll be
Yeah.
very impressed with Dallas if they can hold a home court advantage for the first round of the playoffs. If they're in one of those top 4 seeds, they will definitely have kind of blown my mind a little bit with how much potential was actually there. You mentioned the Timberwolves. Let's talk about them really quickly. They're on a 6-game win streak. This was a team that you and I said, hey, a lot of these guys played in the World Cup. This might benefit them. We kind of set them lower just because of past history with the Timberwolves and kind of being unsure about Rudy Gobert. Gobert has had his best offensive output in the past few seasons. And he's also taking care of things on the defensive end still too. So it's looking like we're getting a very motivated Rudy Gobert. Probably did not enjoy all the talk about that being one of the worst trade deals ever. And so that's good news for the Timberwolves that he seems really motivated. And like you and I said, I think this team can go higher up in from where we predicted them based on how much Anthony Edwards is going to be consistent and ascend as a star and hopefully the alpha on this team.
No, totally agree. Good to see them have a great start. I mean, in the past, it's been pretty disappointing. So hopefully they can keep it up. That's one of the teams I am kind of rooting for silently, especially with the Bulls, the
Yeah,
struggling.
me
So,
too.
yeah,
Yeah, and especially if, like I just want to see Anthony Edwards be great too
me too.
because he's such a big personality as well.
Yeah,
And the Timberwolves is kind of one of those fan bases that with their past history, you just kind of feel sorry for them. You want them to get some joy. The Raptors got their joy back in 2019 with their championship. Let's see something happen. Minnesota at least be like a contender moving into the playoffs, for the
no,
first time since KG. So
agreed. Yeah.
um, another team that's trending. I will gloat a little bit. I'll spend some time in the sunshine. The very next spot in the West at fourth right now, the 6-3 Houston Rockets. Now, granted, their last 7 games have been at home, so they went 6-1 through this home stretch. But they did beat the Nuggets. They beat the Kings twice. Had a number of actually legitimate key wins, aside from maybe the Charlotte Hornets. So very impressed by what the Rockets have done. They had a 10-point lead kind of blow away at the very end of that game against the Nuggets, and they held it together, held on for the win. It was funny. I was talking to my wife and telling her, like, man, Jokic just kind of looks off tonight. You read the box score, it was 36, 21, and 11, I think was what he put off. And I was saying through the whole second half, like, Jokic kind of looks off. And yet he's still able to do that.
Right.
But I think Ime Udoka, the No Dunks podcast, said this, but I think it bears emphasizing that Ime Udoka may be the signing of the offseason, the best
Yeah.
signing of the offseason for any team with how the culture has changed in this team.
No, totally agree. And just the roster changes themselves, bringing in Dylan Brooks,
Yeah.
Fred VanVleet, a young core, just like in learning how to win. I think, especially in this league, is very difficult. Everybody's good, so it's, a lot of younger players that come into the NBA. They're used to being like the top dogs whenever college or internationally or wherever. I mean, the NBA, you're playing elite competition every single night, especially in this era. So, having a coach that's able to put that together and to meld those pieces into a cohesive fashion, I think is key. So, definitely the coaching change it's definitely one to take track of for sure. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love to seeing the excitement, the joy. You're seeing Şengün and Jalen Green
Yeah.
embracing after all these wins, and the struggles that they've been through, kind of seen as a joke for the past few seasons. So just kind of relieved for them to get finally this taste of success, even if the Rockets don't end up getting that 35 wins that I predicted or whatever. It's nice to have this stretch in the opening. I think a lot of people are maybe jumping the gun a little bit, saying like for sure now the Rockets are getting into the play-in. If they can keep up the intensity like this, I don't think it's out of the question. You see teams that try hard and ascend to higher than maybe they belong in the standings, looking at you, New York Knicks. But the Rockets, it's a more loaded West, but I do think there is some play-in potential. I certainly don't have them as a lock there at this point. Like we said with the Mavericks, it's like a little too early to tell, but man, you love what you're seeing so far. I want to move to the Eastern Conference, Justin, and highlight just a couple teams here. The 76ers, a lot of drama around this Harden situation. We talked about him in LA, so we don't need to touch on that too much. Tyrese Maxey has a 50-point game. Joel Embiid is calling him the franchise at this point. So you've got the process and the franchise together. They're 8-1. They're sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference. How surprised are you with this 76ers team?
A little surprised, but at the same time, with Maxi, I agree with other analysts. I think he was really hurt with James Harden being in that lineup, but now he's able to have the ball. So I think that's a huge change. We'll see. Again, it's early, so we'll see if that sticks. But at the same time, this could be a point for Joel Embiid to stay in Philly. I mean, there was huge
True.
rumors for him wanting to bail, and I think if this continuity continues, that he may want to stay. I mean, why leave and go someplace different where you have to learn chemistry all over again, where you have something going, in Philly. So definitely a good sign for them, especially with James Harden be out of there. Drama's gone. Tyrese Maxey's more comfortable. I think it's good things for Philly.
Yeah, and just quickly want to say, I mean, we hope swift recovery for Kelly Oubre Jr.
Agreed.
We did have his father on the show as a guest a while back, so certainly hope swift recovery for Kelly Oubre Jr. Sending our thoughts and prayers to you. Want to mention also the Indiana Pacers,
Yes.
who you and I talked about, mostly Halliburton becoming like a household name after this season, potentially. So far, by the numbers, I mean, he's living up to a lot of the hype that's been around him his whole career. This team just goes nuts. I mean, just there used to be a college team, I think it was like a D2 team that would just run down the court and chuck up threes all game long. I couldn't tell you what school it was. But at times this Pacers team sort of feels like this, like they're just kind of chucking. I think one game this season they put up 155 points, if I'm not mistaken. So it is just insane to watch. But in addition to that, maybe it is a little gimmicky, but they're 6-4 right now, sitting tied for third in the Eastern Conference. Any thoughts on the Pacers so far?
No, I think it's a solid start. I think they're pretty inconsistent. I think I saw them play Chicago, and yeah, it's like some of the things that wasn't really a fan of, but I can see the potential with Indiana. They're always pretty competitive. So
Yeah, and I still wouldn't put them in like this playoff contender category. I mean,
no,
they may be there in the playoffs, but I don't think we see them going too far at this point. But a team to kind of keep an eye on and see how much momentum they're able to generate. I also do want to mention with the Milwaukee Bucks, we've seen some struggles with Damian Lillard. He has like a pretty atrocious field goal percentage right now. Some of his other statistics are down from where they've been. Some of them are career lows, matter of fact. Are you concerned about the Bucks? I mean, they are sitting tied for third at this 6-4 record. Are you concerned about Dame or the Bucks, one way or the other?
I don't think so. Now, granted, I saw them play Chicago, so I mean, is that a great litmus test? I don't know, but Giannis is playing at such an elite level. I've heard even like rumors of firing the coach, which I'm like, what is very dramatic.
True. Yeah.
Um,
I've heard that too. Yep.
I don't think it's time to panic with the Bucks. I mean, they're such an elite team for a long time. You have Damian Lillard. The things just take time. We're so early into the season here, so it's not like they're winless. I mean, if they didn't have any wins, then I think it's time to panic. Or they only had a couple of wins here, but I don't think it's time to panic with the Bucks at all. I think it's just allowing. This is where you have I think the in-season tournament's good because they're competitive games, as compared to where you might be a little bit lax at the beginning of the season. There's a little bit more stakes to it. So I think that'll help fortify chemistry. I think a cause for concern, there's benchmarks in this season. And I think, if they have a mediocre record heading into Christmas or heading into MLK, as I mentioned earlier, the All-Star break, or a little bit within March, I think there's time to panic there. But right now, just let it flow. I think it's just you have a dramatic change in philosophy from Drew Holiday to Damian Lillard. That's going to take some time.
Absolutely. And I 100% co-sign. Matter of fact, I will say I am not worried one bit about the Bucks
Yeah.
at this point, and I'm not worried about Damian Lillard. I think those
Great.
guys are going to figure it out. I know they did have a recent injury to Jay Crowder, which hurts them since they're not as deep as they've been in the past. But even still, I'm not ready to be worried about them one bit just yet. Want to talk about one more team, Justin, and then we'll wrap up here. The Phoenix Suns. sitting at 4-6. They lost a close one to the Lakers. You and I had the Suns as the 3rd seed, but said, keep your eye on this. This team may disappoint this year. This team may not be this powerhouse super team that's everyone is expecting them automatically to be because of the names on this team. They're sitting at 4-6. That's not far away from catching up. You know, they're 4 games back from the top spot in the Western Conference, which still belongs to the Nuggets. Any thoughts about the Phoenix Suns? What you're seeing so far? Are they that big of a disappointment at this point?
I don't think so with their record again. I think, I know as recording on this podcast, I think, I'm blanking on his name. Their point guard. This is embarrassing.
Bradley Beal.
No.
Devin Booker.
There you go. Devin Booker. Thank you. I saw he was out. So I know
they've been kind of trading off rest. Yeah.
So, and that's tricky too. But with their record currently, as we're recording on this podcast, like as you said, Matt, they're 4-6 on a 2-game losing streak. But I don't think it's time to panic yet. To me, I think teams to panic. Just looking at the standings here, I would say the Jazz, the Grizzlies, the Pistons, Wizards, Hornets.
Yeah. Well, those are teams that are no surprise, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think even with Chicago being at 4-7, I just know their track record just based on previous seasons. But if we're just going as an entity, that's not too bad. It's not like the worst thing in the world. But I think as the teams I mentioned, I think that is where you should be sure to be hitting the panic button for sure.
Absolutely. Well, you guys let us know in the comments who has surprised you this season, whether that's good or bad, and who are you worried about? Let us know. Always a pleasure doing these episodes with you, Justin. Always great to have you guys join in on the conversation with us. Really appreciate your support of our show. That's going to wrap it up for today. Keep in mind, you can get in touch with us all the ways I mentioned earlier, but if you have questions for the show, things like that, hoopsologypod@gmail.com. We will see you for the next episode. For Justin Goodrum, I am Matt Thomas. Peace out.
See ya.